Yes.
Today, it is still difficult to imagine in detail the details of a spaceship that will go to the distant planets of the solar system. 2 decades ago, it was just as hard to imagine. Today's spaceships, which go into nearby space today, come out regularly, with amazing accuracy, and conduct their day-to-day activities. Outer space U. Today has become familiar, and when we hear a message from the new spaceship U-9 came out of the Army, we're used to waiting for new records. And flying into space isn't just a record. This painstaking, intense, toasted work, involving dozens of complex research and experiments, works with many unknowns, but so necessary for future cosmonauts and future spaceships of fate, whose contours are barely defined by the books of scientists. Juno Nest, 22 hours and 10 minutes Moscow time. The people of the capital will meet at dawn in 6 hours. Here of the spaceship union of 9 Endrians, Nicolates, Vitals, Sebastian saw the sun a minute after the start. And together with the new day came all the new things, which are the essence and unusualness of space flight: blue Earth floating over its head, a black, distant sky, and the amazing ease of its own body. There are over 50 different experiments ahead, each of which will be repeated several times. Hundreds of physical exercises, but the main thing is 18 Earth days in space. Here's one of them. 24 hours is typical of the first. As for the last day of the flight,
Moscow time is 11 o'clock. The production gymnastics begins with walking at the scene. Those guys are getting ready for Marcia's move.
let's just say it's a little late and awakening, judging by the Moscow hour. And here's your time countdown and your schedule of the day. Today, astronauts, like travelers, have just begun swimming in a vast, unknown ocean. Even simple things like this morning's toilet require an experimental test of their solution. Instead of a toothbrush, a napkin soaked in a microbicide solution. Not quite the usual. Who knows what further deviation from the normal Earth standards lies ahead for future astronauts, and whether these departures will appear for a long time. It's common. Ew. You can shave around here like you're at home. There's even a choice. They prefer a safe razor that has been tested and unfailed over the years of its earthly life. The others like it better. The new space service is a special electric shave with a hair-sucking device. The latter received high praise from the astronauts. And she hasn't failed herself, according to Andrea Nikolov, in all 18 days of flight. I've never been able to cut myself. Yes. I've got it. In time, when space flights become as normal as a subway trip, the space version of the morning toilet will receive the full support of the Earth's male population. Judge yourself in the morning enough to wipe yourself with a napkin soaked in a special solution. You feel perfectly clean, fresh and healthy. Well, and there's a flaw here that you have to clean up and hide all the waste in a sealed bag. But the time will pass, and the designers will correct this unfortunate imperfections. This seems to be an expression of joy at the fact that the toilet is complete and approaching. The time for the first breakfast is approaching, but it has not yet arrived because the day in space does not begin with breakfast.
It's gonna work. Shit.
First of all, we need to discuss the flight program for the coming day. He's gonna be tense. This is the day of life in space. All his watches and even his minutes are calculated and recorded in the logbook. The launch vehicle, the heart and brain of the Spaceship Union, and every morning,
The crew checks all its numerous and complex systems and instruments that ensure that a person stays in space for a long time.
whether the space remote is correct, what are the parameters of the atmosphere, how the guidance system functions. A few years ago, when Earth's first artificial satellite was launched into space, people went out into the streets and looked long into the clear night sky, looking for a small bright star that would quickly swim past the same bright stars. And people didn't find her for long. Sorry for the admiring look, Mom. Today, people live and work in these Earth stars. He reports regularly on his well-being, clarifies the flight program. They do medical research, preparing themselves and future astronauts for flights to other planets of the solar system. It's been an hour and a half, but it's been 24 hours. And now it's time for the first breakfast. Turns out, it's not that simple of a space table set. The cosmonaut's menu is a normal terrestrial food. Only a space-based dining room. Coffee can be heated right in the tubs. There is an electric heater for this. In a special package, a daily ration for 2 people. Meat cans, borscht, soup, harko, coffee, all natural products. The flight has 4 single meals in 2.5 hours. They'll have breakfast for the second time. According to the cosmonauts' faces, they had a good appetite. At the end of each day, the logs appeared. I really like the meat cans. Feels like you like it. To master space, you have to learn to live and work in it for a long time. But how will it feel to be a man on this long flight? What changes can be made in a body that has been deprived of its normal Earth's weight of gravity? In a few days, when the Union 9 crew returns to the ground and the first results of the research are available, scientists will say that we now have sufficient reason to move on to an ever-increasing length of flight. The scientists are gonna tell you in a few days, but it took long days and hours to work in space to obtain these reasonable reasons. When the subject of the study was not only the surrounding world but also its own body, your own heart and eyesight. It is important for doctors to learn about the contrasting sensitivity of the eyes of cosmonauts and how the characteristics of the visual apparatus are preserved. On the first space missions, people wore suits. Today's ships are unnecessary. The cosmonaut has gained complete freedom and extraordinary ease of movement. But it is this lung that poses a great danger because the human being needs a constant physical load. How can we maintain the body? The doctors have included a special set of exercises in the flight program. I think it was the hardest one. Space worked. Twice a day, Nicola and Sebastian were doing gymnastics. The exercise they performed in the domestic compartment for 50 minutes gave the body a load close to what a person was experiencing under normal Earth conditions. The same exercises had a general tonic effect on the nervous, cardiovascular and digestive systems, and prepared astronauts for future transshipments during the descent. The most responsible part of the work begins on the day of the complex technical experiments of testing and processing new instruments. As a general rule, such experiments require prior orientation of the ship and subsequent stabilization of the situation. The control system is activated. The crew Yapo's task is to achieve the position in the space necessary for the experiment. In this case, it is important that the axis of the optical illuminator be directed strictly to the ground, as the flight program is scheduled for that time. Photos of the Earth Yapo's surface. Look closely now, the control handle will be rejected. And it's gonna start spinning right away. Oh, hand in neutral, rotation stopped. The ship is now oriented and can begin to photograph a designated area of the Earth. The results of each technical experiment conducted in space are essential for the proper design of future spacecraft management systems. Only in weightlessness, in real flight conditions, can a new system, a new instrument be tested, their capabilities and errors determined. It's done, and it's done, and it's done by a spaceman's vizier with the ship's system. This experiment is carried out in a certain segment of the flight when the ship is in a stable position. Watching the solar disk move on the instrument screen for time. The crew records data that are important for many of the tasks involved in the management of spacecraft. This screen identifies the errors of one of its orientations when the ship rotates around the axis. Today, YOPOS means of determining the direction of flight by ground-based radio equipment are not sufficient for long-range flights. The future cosmonauts will have to use the instruments and techniques that form the basis. These autonomous navigation experiments test the work of an optical sextant. Happiness. It measures the altitude of the moon above the Earth's horizon. Nikolov records these measurements in the ship's log. The results of this work will be used in the design of new navigation systems.
Moscow time is 19 hours and 15 minutes. We're continuing to release the finals in the game. Spaceship crew of the Union. He made 140 revolutions around the ground during his working day. The cosmonauts conducted medical research, scientific technical experiment. According to Andrei Nikolov and Vitaly Sebastianov, their appetite is good. They consume the necessary amount of liquid in the form of drinking water, fruit juices, soup, and coffee. According to telemetry and television surveillance, cosmonauts' health is good work, and their ability is high. A short afternoon rest and a working day again.
Exact weather forecasting for at least 2 to 3 weeks extreme. It's still a long way from being solved. It's not just a vacationer who needs it. It's important to everyone whose job depends on the weather. Even a week's forecast requires information on the state of the entire planet's atmosphere. Meteorological satellites and spaceships that fly around the Earth in 1.5 or 2 hours make it much easier to observe our planet. Photographing it. cosmonauts help scientists to refine geological maps of selected areas of the Earth and identify the most likely locations to search for minerals, sea currents, and fish stocks. This kind of work is required under Earth conditions, much more effort and resources. And when a new spaceship comes into orbit and the face of an astronaut appears on the screens, the television sets gather everything. How's the ship's cabin? What does the Earth look like from a few hundred kilometers? It's not just about scientists. It interests all the people of the Earth. Sebastianov is preparing to report from the ship's domestic compartment. A portable television camera will now be turned on, and millions of people will see the lives of astronauts, their faces, their smiles, and their complex space environment, a house floating over our land. Turns out the planet on which man lives is a very small planet. From a height of 200 kilometers, we can no longer see the borders that divided the Earth into nations and states. You can't see the whites or the blacks, but you can only see the work of the human being in the green fields. If it weren't for the Earth's memory, it would be impossible to believe that people who learned how to fly into space weren't. They can learn to overcome tears of sorrow and the worst war. It comes to the end of a long 16-hour working day, and with it it comes to the end of the day's flight program. All that remains is to be processed and recorded in the logbook as observations and research. Put the equipment back where it belongs. After dinner, they'll have their mutuals. Medical check will measure arterial pressure, pulse frequency, breathing. And there will be a time of rest when you can read and listen to your favorite music. But it's definitely in the program's time. They're going to bed. Good night. And good dreams on Earth. No, I don't. We have to. Then there'll be a new day and a new job. So those 18 days to the limit, filled with hard work. They will observe and report on forest fires, dust storms, sea arrest to Earth. They will conduct a unique experiment to photograph cloud formations in the Indian Ocean. In this experiment, apart from the ship, the Union of Nine will take part in a scientific research vessel, Academic Shursiv. And they will prove on their own experience that a person can stay and work for a long time in conditions of weightlessness and bring to The ground a wealth of material that will enable scientists to go further on the path to the establishment of long-term orbital stations. And finally, this last 18th day will come. Today, it is still difficult to imagine in detail the details of a spaceship that will go to the distant planets of the solar system. But it's going to be built and it's going to start its flight. And the people who will be in it all away from Earth will be gratefully reminded of the names of the scientists and astronauts who are. Today, he's doing everything he needs to make sure this future flight takes place.